and also lamination, where we can sort of embed a few things as well into our fabric. So obviously the samples I have are from different projects. So basically what we're just looking at is kind of like some of the ideas behind them, and hopefully it will guys give you some inspiration for when you're deconstructing and reconstructing your own garments. So the first thing we're going to look at today is the felt loom. So have any of you guys ever made felt before, or fleece? Okay, so let's start at the very beginning then. So basically, wool fibre. This stuff has all been cleaned, brushed and carded, so it's had all of the lanolin removed, all the dirt removed, and then it's been brushed, so all the fibres are in relatively the same direction. Some of it's been dyed. There's sort of various different qualities of fleece here as well, but basically wool fibre. Have you guys ever seen the back of like a shampoo bottle? And it's got a little circle, and usually it's got like a damaged hair follicle, and then it's got one that's like, you use our product and it will be nice and smooth. So wool fibres, like the individual fibres, are actually quite similar in terms of how they're made up. So basically each one of these fibres has little scales all along the outside of it, and what we're going to be doing today is basically we're going to be using these needles here, and these are felting needles. And we're going to be using it to basically pull the fibres in and out from one another. And basically, as they're being agitated and moved around, those little scales on the outside of the wool fibre are going to start hooking onto each other. And basically, it's going to start to come together to form like a non-woven material. So these guys here, they basically have little burrs all over the outside. So they're more or less like a little fish hook. And I'm not going to give you guys these today, but you can buy them from the shop if you want. The problem we have with that is people have a tendency to stab themselves, so that's why I can't let you guys share them or anything like that. And they hurt a lot going in and they hurt a lot coming out as well, just with little hooks on the side. But anyway, so the first thing I'm going to show you guys is the felt loom, and also how to construct sort of like an even flat piece of felt. And then we're going to look at how we can incorporate other materials onto that as well. So if you guys want to come around, we'll just take a little look at some of the different equipment and stuff we have available. So if you guys will come down here, I'll start with the carder.
Yeah, actually got that too.
Cool. So this is the barrel cutter, and basically what we can use it to do is get our fibres nice and straight and in the same direction. So this is roving, or sliver, depending on what you call it. And so it's all been dyed, and you can see most of the fibres are going in the same direction. But because it's basically all in a nice string, what you find is if it's got a bit of twist in it and things are tangled, it's really, really strong. So what we want to do is we basically want to separate everything out so it's all really nice and easy and comes apart. So nice, super fluffy. And we're going to be making something called a bat. Basically with this bat we can then turn it into felt. Cool. Sweet, so the first thing you want to make sure is that this is stuck onto the table properly, so there's a couple of little clamps here and here. I also recommend, just because we're putting a bit of energy on it, just put your foot on the bottom of the table, just so that we don't go pink. It shouldn't do that, but just in case. Cool, and so you want to get your fibres just on this bed here, and you don't want them going all the way out to the sides, because basically as it's getting fed into the machine, it's going to start going out like this, and if it's already right at the edge, it's just going to go straight into the gears. Sweet. So you can mix together as many different colours as you want, or you can just do it all in the same colour. It doesn't have to be any particular thing. Cool. crazy with it or start adding your own fibres, you can just rock them. Cool. So to make a full bat, basically you want to get it to the top of the needles, but we don't have to do that. I think. Cool. So once you're done, basically you want this middle bar at the top. We're just going to put the screwdriver in all the way through. I'm just going to pull that up. Cool. And we're just going to peel it off the needles to the back and then kind of hold it like a ponytail and pull it off. Cool. So you can also see how dirty the carder was beforehand, so it's picked up a whole bunch of white fibres. So ideally you kind of want to leave it quite clean. Cool. Anyway, so basically we have a bat, which is going to be much easier to make a flat piece of felt out of. So we're going to move over to the felt loom. Cool. So this is the felt loom. So basically it is an entire bed of those felting needles. So it has two controllers. It has one that controls the needles and one that controls the rollers. So basically the needles is going to be how fast it goes up and down, and the rollers is going to be how fast it moves the material through the machine. So with felt, basically the fibres are going to want to grab onto whatever's right next to it. And since all our fibres are going this way, basically it's going to go shrinking like that. So to make an even flat piece of felt, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we change the directions of the fibres. So part of why using a bat is so good is that we can just peel off layers of it. Cool. We don't really want anything smaller than an A5 going through this because what we're going to find is it's going to get stuck in there. Cool. So I have all my fibres going this way, and now I'm just going to take off chunks of my bat. I want my fibres going the other way. So this is going to help everything shrink evenly. Sweet. And then I'm going to go back in the original direction as well. So the idea behind the pulling off little bits as well, we want to make sure that everything's overlapping. Sweet. So the power is just on the side here. So just when you're done with it, make sure you switch it off. There's also an emergency stop here and one at the top, so if anything bad happens, you can hit either one of these. Also, if the fire alarm goes off, just make sure you hit one of these so that we know it's off when you leave the building. So there's speed controllers for both of these. I like to start at 50-50 and then just work my way up from there. So each one has an off and an on. Cool. And so I just want to make sure that my sleeves are up, I'm not wearing any loose jewellery, and I have long hair flowing into the machine. Just because we don't want to risk anything being put in there, and also just be a little bit careful with your fingers. You can't actually stick them in there, but just don't try to do that either. Cool. And what we're just going to be doing is feeding in our bat, and it's going to struggle to catch the first time you put it through, so it just might need a little bit of help. So it's now gone from a big pile of fluff, so it's just starting to come together. So to get a nice even piece of felt, there's a couple of things we want to change each time we put it through. So last time I went through this way. What I want to make sure to do is I flip it over and I change the direction as well. And I'll just put it in again. And just tidy the edges up as you go. Cool. So you can make this as dense or as fine as you want as well. Like you can make a really fine piece of felt, or you can make something that's like quite heavy and dense. We can also speed things up. So we're getting more punches per the time that it's going through. The other thing we can do as well is we can reverse it. So the only thing you have to consider with reversing is basically that the bit that went through is going to end up getting twice as many punches as say this end, and this bit didn't go at all. So it's quite good for doing like seaming and things like that, where you might only want a certain area to be quite heavily felted and the rest just lightly punched. Sweet. So if I wanted this to be like a really nice stable piece of felt, I'd probably put it through the machine about 6 or 7 times just to get it coming together. You do also kind of run the risk sometimes of it, if it's getting heaps and heaps of needle punches, it might actually start breaking up those fibers again. It's just not the end of the world, it's just it might not be quite as soft, it might end up with little spiky bits. So the cool thing about non-wovens is we can cut it, it's not going to fray, we have it's a great way to seal edges and things like that as well, and we can incorporate it into other materials. So basically the rules of this machine is, in an ideal world, we're using wool fleece, but we don't just have to use that. We can use other animal fibers, and we can also use like nice open weave fabrics. We don't want to be using really densely woven materials, basically because the needles are really going to struggle to get through. So we have some other options for dense fibers that I'll go through with you as well. Also, we can't put anything hard into the machine, so no wood, no metal. But for the most part, if it's soft and flexible, so yarns are fine and things like that. And ideally, we want to be using sort of like a wool or an open weave cotton or silk. But if you definitely want to use a polyester, just let me know and I can tell you whether or not it's going to work. Just with polyesters, they have a much higher tensile strength, so they tend to want to battle the needles rather than just give way. So there's that. Cool. So I will grab some fabric, and the type of fabric that is super ideal. So this gauze is sort of like the perfect fabric to go through the machine. However, you can definitely experiment with other things. So let's cut a slice of this off. And just pop it on top. So depending on how felted my fabric is going to depend how well this is going to attach. To say I have a really heavily felted piece of felt. It's quite dense, and most of the fibers have like really started to go in there and started to get really connected and really dense. What that means is there's not as much basically to grab onto the fabric as well. So what we'll want to do is we want to put some fresh fleece in there. I'll just grab some. Basically to act almost like a glue. So these fresh bits haven't been felted before. To be honest, this is quite lightly felted, so it probably would attach. But what I'll do is just put some fresh stuff in. And then pop our fabric on top. And you hear that noise in the machine, so it's now really having to like work to get through it. So putting that noise isn't like a bad thing, but if it gets really extreme, that's probably where we're going to start thinking about, like, maybe we're going a little too thick and too dense, so we probably want to like pull it back after that point. The other thing is those needles are punching through the fabric, so they are actually going to damage the surface of the fabric as well, so that is worth keeping in mind. Whether or not that was the look you were going for. Cool. So, you can see that my material is starting to attach to this. So again, you probably want to put it through a few more times. And basically what we're really looking for are those fibres coming up the top. So once they're coming up and through the fabric, it's really, really attached. We could move on to other types of felting, so we could then wet felt the whole thing, or something along those lines. And that would continue basically the process of joining those two materials together as well. So for finishing, you can wash it, wet felt it, or we can also heat press it as well. So by heat pressing it, what we're going to end up with is something that's quite fluffy and loose. We're basically just pushing those fibres back down so that they're nice, flat and a little bit more manageable. So if you guys want to come over it.
Use video image.
But basically it's just two hot plates. It has a set temperature and a timer, so I'll let you know when it's done. Cool. So just want to make sure it's got Teflon on either side. Cool. And I think this is set for a minute, but it's only at 90 degrees, so it's not too hot. So we're not trying to cook it, we're not trying to burn it, we just want everything to be heated and also have that pressure on it just to get it much nicer, much flatter and much easier to deal with. I think this is on for a whole minute, so let's just pretend that goes beep beep. And it's just going to give us a much smoother, nicer edge on our felt and just help sort of finish it so it's a lot more usable. Cool. So, does that all kind of make sense? So we'll go over and have a look at some of the samples and I'll just explain what people have done or how they've gone about this now. Cool. So, I mean, in terms of felting, it is a really easy way to make your own materials or your own base fabrics. Things along those lines. Obviously, very easy to cut, very easy to sort of perforate, sew into. So we've got like a whole bunch of reprocessing sort of techniques as well. So it can be woven. You can cut out shapes and refelt them in as well. So if you're looking at it from a surface design perspective or incorporating a different type of felted material. Just some examples of different fabrics that have been attached. We can also laser cut it and felt it back together or impregnate it with glues, anything like that. It's super absorbent as well, so it does take on things pretty easily. There are also quite a few examples of Nuno felting as well. So Nuno felting basically is where we attach a flat piece of felt to a fabric and then we wet felt it, and the easiest way to wet felt anything is just putting it in a warm washing machine. Because basically for wet felting what you want is heat, soap and agitation. A washing machine gives us all those things really, really easily and quickly.
So how do you do that when you wet felt something? How do you ensure that it all stays together?
Usually I would like to get it on the needle felt first. So like it's already starting to come together so I don't have to worry about my washing machine getting full of place.
So you're just like basically hand felting something like and just put it through the washing machine and just together?
And the other one is putting it in a pillowcase or one of those laundry bags, and that way it's going to stay together pretty well as well.
If you wanted to like dry it in a certain shape, say you wanted to bring hair or something, would you just like
you put it on a mold.
On a unmold, so
Yeah.
you wouldn't be able to put it through the washing machine. Just like,
Yeah, no. So you could put it in the washing machine. It depends whether you want it. So that's a different type of felting. Usually you put it on a mold and you just like hand agitate it, and it should go to that shape. It does dry. So basically, one of the things too is it's still quite malleable while it's wet. As it's coming together, getting denser and denser, you can basically mold it, and then when you dry it, if it's kept in that shape, it's likely to stay in that shape as well, just depending on how dense it is. So, I mean, we're looking at pretty loose felt, like here, like nothing's super crazy dense. So there's those. Also, in terms of using the hand one as well, there's a couple of samples. So these ones here, where people have felted around objects and sort of embedded them into the shapes. Same thing here, yarns, just felting over the yarns. So having fleece either side and embedding them inside, or into a certain degree incorporating them into it as well. So yeah, there's more examples of Nuno felting. So these are very lightly felted, and basically what's happening is those fibres that were going through the top, they've started to connect to each other, and as they've done that, they've brought the fabric together and basically created these patterns on the surface. So this is like quite an extreme version of that as well. Cool. And we can do that again, so open fabrics work a lot better than using something super dense, because those fibres are really going to struggle to go through. Cool, so this is my very quick felt induction. Do you guys have any questions about any of that or any of the samples? No? Okay. Just because we're a little bit short on time, I'm just going to go through the next bit. But basically, if you would like to use the felt loom and be inducted in it, you're welcome to have a little play with what we've got here, make a little sample, and then I can sign you guys off as well. So I'll just finish this, and then we'll talk a bit more about that later. Basically stabbing it ourselves. We want to do it onto a piece of foam so that we have something to stab into. So this is quite good for doing detailed stuff. You can also basically sculpt with it as well. So there are felting sculptors that basically just use a single needle and they can make basically whatever form or shape they want. In terms of using it for reprocessing our materials as well, this is where we can also use denser materials. So this is like quite a densely woven polyester. And because we're hand punching it, we're pretty aware of the force required, so we don't have to worry about needles breaking in the same way. And if they do, and they will eventually, you can just quickly replace them, and they're like pretty cheap, so it's fine. So again, we might just put some fleece on the top, either as a decorative thing, or if we wanted to, I don't know, finish an edge or something. Cool. And then very carefully, we want to make sure that we don't stab our fingers. I also don't recommend putting this on your lap and doing it either, because occasionally the needles do go all the way through. Cool. So we can see now just like the fibers coming through. So we could do as many layers as we liked. We could slowly build that up. We could put colour, all those kind of things into it. And again, the more you do it, the denser it's going to become. So it is one of those things that can be a little bit time consuming sometimes. So you just have to have a little bit of patience with it. And eventually you'll get there. Cool. So just lightly felt. Pretty much any material you like using this process. Also, if you wanted to make like felt balls or yarns or anything like that, this also works really, really well. Basically, if you're doing a shape, you would just take some fleece, turn it into that shape. Sometimes it will take a little bit of time, and we could just stab that, reform it. Just wash your fingers, because it's, yeah, not much fun. Cool, and basically the more you felt this, the more you're going to basically create a form or something along those lines that you could then attach to something else or incorporate. So it's quite handy in that respect as well. So, in terms of what types of things you can felt and materials, I like using the wool fleece even if I'm just using it as a glue, if that kind of makes sense. Because we're pulling these fibres in and out, and that could work for a variety of different things.
Can you buy wool fleece from the store?
Yes, yep, so we have it all up at the shop, and I've also got some free white stuff as well. Plus that bucket's free, so you guys can help yourself to anything in there. So one thing I did try to do today was incorporate like deconstructed fabrics. So you guys have looked at deconstructing and leaving it as a fabric. So you can actually literally maybe not turn it right back into a fibre, but you could deconstruct the yarn, you could incorporate the yarn in with the fleece as well. So I mean, this is just like one idea. You guys could look at doing many other things. So just with deconstructing wovens, I don't think I brought my needle, but basically what you want to be doing is just pulling them out. And if you have a needle, it makes it much easier as well, so you can just pick off. So basically we're reversing, unweaving it, and you can go either from one direction or from both directions, just pulling out those little fibres. Again, a little bit fiddly. Laser cutting helps with this as well. So you can laser cut something out. You might find that it starts to fall apart, so that's sometimes quite handy. And basically then with these fibres, we could look at how we could incorporate them into the felt, whether they're embedded in it or whether they're part of it. So one thing that's quite handy with that is we can use these things here, which are flip carders or hand carders. And basically what we do is we take some wool fleece, we take a sprinkling of our fibres, and probably some more wool fleece. Cool. Cool. And so with this brushing process, we're not pushing down, we're just going across in opposite direction. And that is just going to start blending our fibres together. So we're going to start ending up with our deconstructed materials sort of blended in with our fleece as well. So it does take a little bit of time and energy to get those all blended in. But also, if you have any knit fabric as well, that's a lot easier to deconstruct because the loops, usually, if you're lucky, you manage to get the end of something. So obviously, these are just the ends of some knitting. So we just want to find an end. Haha, should I be so lucky? Cool. And we can just undo these loops, like nice and easily. So with this, you might actually be able to get some yarn that would be reusable as well. So you could look at sort of unraveling something that's knitted up, and you could ball up that yarn and you could use it for weaving or you could use it for something else. Cool. Otherwise, we could also chop it up and we could incorporate it into our wool fleece concoction as well. Cool. And then finally, we have the embellisher. So with the embellisher, it is basically a tiny version of this attached to a sewing machine. So some of you guys might have wool coating. So this is kind of in between. So whereas the hand punch, we can basically punch any fabric we like. With this one, we want to be either using wools or something that's sort of in between, being really lightly, being really open weave. So this one's sort of like the middle gauge. It works quite well with wool suiting and things like that. Basically, it is very similar to a sewing machine. It's just basically going to go up and down. The only thing is that we're in control of the fabric being moved. So what's quite important is that we move it quite slowly. If we move it really fast while these needles are down, what is going to happen is that basically they're just going to break because we're just pulling them way faster than they can go. So it takes a little bit of practice, and don't worry if you guys break a couple, but ideally we won't. Cool, so just make sure the foot's down, and I'll turn the power on. Cool, so I just want to make sure I'm moving really nice and slowly. So just doing it on the wool one, you can start to see that the wool at the back has started to felt. So basically, moving really slowly, we can just start to felt that material for whatever reason. We could also incorporate, again, fresh fleece in. We could do seams, we could do edges. We could just use the fleece basically to glue things together as well. So if we wanted these two guys, might be a little bit too, use this one here. Just see if that's too fat. Might be fun. Cool. Sweet. And basically we've started to join those two pieces together. Nice. Does that all kind of make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. So we will move on to the double-sided fusing laminate.